Okay, so you want to get started?
Yes. Trump threatens tariff on Canada, Mexico, and China. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this live webinar. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Here's the disclaimer. Oops. The information presented in is someone the information presented in this webinar is for informational purposes only and reflects the views and opinions of the presenters. It does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. While efforts have been made to ensure the accuracy and completeness of this information, no guarantees are made regarding its correctness. The organizers and presenters disclaim any liability for actions taken on the content of this webinar. Attendees are encouraged to consult with qualified professionals for specific advice tailored to their situation. Additionally, the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the hosting organization. By participating in this webinar, you acknowledge and agree to this disclaimer. Oh, you're on mute.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sumaya Jibril. The background is supposed to be this Phoenix Global, but it looks like I have this, fire coming out of my ear. Um, a little bit about me. My parents own two modest clothing store in Falls Church. I grew up in the trade world. After I joined the military and finished my service, I got an internship with U.S. Customs for a few months. And after that, it turned into an employee. I became an employee for about 3 years and 8 months. So while I was over there, I learned so much about customs, duties, travel, trade. And the reason I went there, I was like, I'm not going to be like my parents, but that's not how it works out. So I end up helping them now. So after working with customs, I was like, okay, I want to be a customs broker, but you can't be a federal employee and become a customs broker. So I leave, go to corporate world, the supply chain, and I try it out for like 9 months. But I don't really like taking orders from people. So I was like, I'm going to do my own thing, start my own company. And Phoenix Global started as a consulting company, but my clients wanted products. They're like, we want the products with the side of consulting. And I was like, okay, that's great. So I have family all over the globe, and they make the best employee most of the time. So our company's from scratch, like people on the ground source your products, anything you want, whether it's clothing. So our niche is textiles, but some people ask for papyrus oil or some type of machinery. If they ask for it, we deliver it. But like I said, our niche is textile. And the people on the ground source your products, take it to the manufacturers, make it into a product. Then we ship it, clear it at the border, and then deliver it to your house. So it's a door-to-door service. So mostly we do t-shirts and hoodies with specialized logos from Egypt and other Middle Eastern countries. And then additionally, if you have cut and sew textiles, if you provide us with the technical and the right documentation, we'll also get that done for you from there and bring it to your doorstep. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamil Lewis Johnson. So, give you a bit of background on myself. Before I came into this industry, I actually worked for TSA for close to 10 years. I did check baggage and checkpoint security. I did security at Barack's second inauguration in DC. So, it was a great experience, but I wanted to leave that industry and get into something different. I already had my bachelor's degree. I actually came in the industry as a temp working at a customs brokerage company. I was able to get hired after a month. And from there, I just took advantage of all the learning opportunities available to me. I found out the VP of the company did training for free. So I studied with my customs broker exam with him. I actually passed it the first time I took it. It took a lot of studying, a lot of dedication. I actually gave up running just to spend more time studying because it was so important that I passed it the first time. I didn't want to take it again. It's a very stressful exam to take. So one of the things I took from that is just really having a good mentor to help you out with passing the exam and just taking advantage of other opportunities. You want to learn the information, but you have to now apply it. So reading and learning as I went along, I learned more and more. I actually job hopped to a couple of other customs brokerages, and I also worked for two importers, focusing on trade compliance, classification, making sure their invoices met the import requirements. But now I have a customs brokerage, and my company is Just Your Broker Inc. I'm the CEO and founder, and we're based in New York, but we do nationwide customs clearance, importer security filing, customs bonds, trade compliance, import management training, audits, duty drawback, carnets, food facility registrations, customs broker training. I train you basically the same way that I learned, except it involves more technology. And we believe that education is very important to importing and exporting, especially when you don't want to get all those penalties and fees. So our agenda today is basically we're going to talk about the historical purpose and effects of tariffs, tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico, free trade agreements, de minimis, who is impacted, retaliatory measures circumventing tariffs. So we're going to talk about President Trump, of course, because Trump is making a lot of changes right now. And Donald Trump is the 45th and 47th president of the United States. He's the second president to serve two non-consecutive terms in office. He's also the oldest person to win in the office as well. So the historical use of tariffs, actually just learned this the other day. So I'm very happy to teach you guys something that I just learned myself. So before the federal income tax was established in 1913, tariffs were a major revenue driver for the government. From 1790 to 1816, tariffs accounted for 90% of federal revenue, according to Douglas Irwin at Dartmouth College economics. He's studied the history of trade policy. So just don't think tariffs just came about. They've been in effect for a long time, and we're going to learn how tariffs are affecting us even today. So the purpose of Trump's imposed tariffs, he came into office and he was talking about America's first trade policy that began in 2017. His intention was to bring back companies to America, protecting American companies, stimulating the economy, and reducing the trade deficit. So his intentions were, of course, to help out his own people, which is very important. Of course, you want to help your own first. But there are a lot of effects of his past Trump imposed tariffs. So China actually increased retaliated tariffs up to 25% on US goods. So agricultural products, food, it actually hurt the farmers here in the US. It cost the US 25.7 billion in revenues beginning 20 between 2018 and 2019. Americans paid the cost of the additional tariffs imposed. There were a loss of jobs, specifically in the manufacturing employment industry, and the price of goods increased as well. So more money that was coming out of our pockets. So a deeper look into the loss of jobs. I actually found this on the Federal Reserve Board. They actually wrote up a study on how the tariffs affected the job market. So we find that tariff increases enacted in 2018 are associated with relative reductions in manufacturing employment and relative increases in producer prices. In terms of manufacturing employment, rising input costs and retaliatory tariffs each contribute to the negative relationship, and the contribution from these channels more than offsets a small positive effect from import protection. So it was a negative effect in reference to employment, which I think Trump's intentions were to do the opposite.
China, Trump's favorite. So in China, currently, the US already imposes additional duty of 25% on many imports from China. So if their regular duty is 6%, there would be like additional 25% just because you're China. And not because of that, but also because China subsidizes a lot of their goods for their people. So they get it very low cost and they dump it in the US. And because of that, like China, especially with President Trump, China always had higher duties. So President Trump is now threatening to impose additional 10% tariff on imports from China. This new tariff would be on top of the existing tariff. It would increase it to 35% on almost all Chinese goods. Next slide, please. So the other additional tariff on countries with free trade agreement that caught people by surprise was Canada and Mexico. So first, let's start with what is free trade agreement. Free trade agreement is an agreement between two or more countries, where they agree on certain obligation that affects trade in goods and services and protection for investors and intellectual property rights. They generally leads to reduced duty rates and they help stimulate the trade between participating countries. So tariff on Canada. The issue is the USMCA. So there's an agreement for a free trade agreement where they don't have to pay for most of the goods that they're bringing, either goods coming from Canada or Mexico to the US, vice versa. Now he's saying 25% on those goods. So that means, does that mean that they're going to effectively get rid of USMCA that's been, that replaced NAFTA with us for years? And that definitely would create disruptions of free trade. And it would just negate many of the agreement benefits and disrupt the free flow of goods. It would not be good for either parties by doing this. So the economic impact is it could lead to increased costs for U.S. consumer and businesses, potentially affecting supply chain and the overall economy of all three nations. Like companies will always, uh, so let's say I'm a company, I'm importing goods and I'm selling it to my customers. So I'm being charged duty that I'm going to increase the price of my goods, then my consumer is going to be paying for those duty. Like it doesn't help the U.S. consumers um, to increase duty, especially between Canada and Mexico. Yes, the automotive industry impact. So the USMCA includes specific provision that a 25% tariff could significantly, so it includes specific provision for the automotive industry, including the rule of origin requirement. So adding the 25% could significantly disrupt this arrangement and impact automobile productions across North America. And the other one is agricultural trade disruptions. So the USMCA maintains zero tariff treatment for most agriculture goods. Again, the farmers being harmed, and it would harm the farmers and the agricultural business in all three countries. Potential retaliation. So Canada and Mexico might respond with their own tariff on U.S. goods, like escalating trade tensions. So tariff is used as most of the time renegotiation pressure. So the tariff threat might be a strategy to pressure Canada and Mexico into renegotiating because they're going to review the deadline for USMCA for the renewal in 2026. So this could be a tactic on Trump's administration. Could other countries with FTAs be impacted? Possibly, but we still haven't heard about them. We heard about Colombia, which Jermail will cover soon. So some of the countries with free trade agreement with the United States are Australia, Bahrain, Chile, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Israel, Jordan, Korea, Morocco, Oman, Panama, Peru, Singapore, and Colombia. So this de minimis rule also like applies to the tariff. It's related. It goes back to Trump's idea of protecting the United States, the consumers, and making sure that goods that are coming to the United States are in the interest of the United States. But this rule was applied, this tightening the de minimis duty exemption was applied by Biden, but it also applies to Trump because he would go for it as well, in my opinion. So the current exemption is that goods valued coming from international under $800, they enter duty free. So people have been taking advantage of that. So because they don't want to pay duty, they would be like, oh no, this is personal goods. It's under $800. Let me just bring it in. So the shipment increased for up to 600% from 2015 to 2023. And in 2024, over 1.36 billion de minimis shipments entered into the United States. So the proposed changes are to excluding merchandise subject to Section 201, which are solar cells and modules, steel, aluminum, and 301 unfair trade tariff from China. Mostly the unfair trade tariff is not just China, but China is in the mainstream. That's the trade war that we're having right now. So that 301 is applied to China. So this proposed changes, they required detailed 10-digit HTS classification. This is to protect U.S. businesses, intellectual property, and national security. So the objective again, reduce unfair trade practices, block illegal goods and synthetic drug imports, and leveling playing field for American businesses. So in this situation, with fentanyl coming into the United States through the borders, they make it really easy, whether it's shipping it to the United States, making it available online. I actually covered earlier this month about counterfeit goods coming into the United States and how it impacts trade. And you can actually find it in Phoenix Global YouTube. But a lot of children are being targeted by these drugs, by specifically fentanyl, and it's causing a lot of overdose. And the children are not, they don't know what they're buying. They're just like sad. And then somebody in Snapchat would message them, be like, oh, if you take this medication, you'll feel a lot better. They pretend to be their friend. They ship it to their house. That child takes the drug and they pass away. So there's so many cases of this that this is very important to protect our kids, our families, our businesses. Next, please. So the timeline, it was announced in September 13, 2024. So the public had about 60 days period to comment. So that's we're past that, and they would go to www.regulations.gov. And the National Economic Advisor, Lyell, said that we cannot let Chinese-founded e-commerce platform gain an unfair trade advantage while American businesses play by the rules. Next, please.
Okay, so who is impacted by tariffs? There's businesses. Businesses have to pay the import tariffs when it's coming in, but those extra duties are then passed on to the consumers. Of course, they don't want to lose out on their profits, so they have to pass it along. The consumers then experience inflation in the price of goods. Then they have less money to spend on other necessities. There's also the issue with farmers, reduced exports because the other countries retaliate on their tariffs. Now they're not getting as much business. Foreign companies have to reduce their prices in order to maintain their marketability. So pretty much everyone's affected by this. So that's why it's very important that we're talking about this today.
The economic impact. There will be a GDP reduction, Mexico by 1.7%, Canada 1.2 over the next 5 years. Inflation increase, Mexico up to 2.3%, Canada 1.7. The potential US job losses are 344,000 if the Canada and Mexico tariff are implemented, and 58,000 jobs for the China tariffs. This would potentially strengthen the US dollar, but it would also weaken a peso and Canadian dollar by about 1.5%. And to go back to the automotive industry, so the price for vehicles would increase on average 2,100 for US made vehicles. But if these vehicles are made in Canada or Mexico, they would increase from 8,000 to $10,000. And this would be a major impact on US car makers like General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. They could lose $5 to $9 billion. And then the disruption auto parts supply chain. Canada and Mexico account for 52% of US auto imports. This thing is not just the car makers that will be affected. The freight forwarders will also be affected who ship to Canada or Mexico, because if prices are increased, then it would not be worth it for people to buy these vehicles and then ship them overseas. So it affects and everybody in that supply chain. The energy sector. So the potential gas prices will increase 25 to 75 cents per gallon. It just got down to $3. I remember when it was like 1.99, and now like we're excited it's $3. Like I really don't want it to increase, and then we don't want it to go back to COVID times. Especially that now that the administration said everybody has to go back in person to their offices, especially federal employees. So this would not help, the regular people. And Canada supplies 60% of US crude oil imports. And the possible Canadian retaliation would be to threats to cut off energy to Michigan, New York State, and Wisconsin. Next, please. The cat is like really upset.
We're going to talk about retaliatory measures and diplomatic relations between these countries.
So Canada could retaliate by taxes on Florida orange juice that are being imported into Canada, Tennessee whiskey, and Kentucky peanut butter. Mexican response could be to promote investment and nearshoring. So nearshoring is so where companies who have significant tariff that they have to pay when goods are coming to the United States, for example, like even countries like China, all these tariffs are increasing. They're like, okay, so how do we circumvent the system? So what they do is they make like half of the product, almost all of it, and they bring it to Mexico and just put up the final touches. They just put a label "Plan to Mexico." That's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. If the country, if there are certain rules with our regulation, with country of origin and labels, where it's manufactured, where it's sold, and if it's not done in Mexico and you're saying it's done in China, that's not allowed. So Mexico might promote that investment and allow that to happen. And if they say it's made in Mexico, like it might not be easy for the government to know where this information is coming from, or will require them a lot of work to kind of be like, oh, this is nearshoring. So if the government is not participating, the Mexican government, this will make it difficult on the US government and allow people to circumvent the rules of law and our regulations by nearshoring. So Canada pledges to hire more border agents. China stances they plan to safeguard their interests. So they're probably going to retaliate with additional duties. Next, please.
Okay, so Colombia steps into the picture. So we want to talk about the commodities that are imported from Colombia that are very big. These are their top commodities. So there's crude oil, gold, flowers, coffee. I know a lot of people drink coffee. I do not, but I'm sure many of you do. I used to constantly work at jobs and I'd see them drink like 4 or 5 cups of coffee before the day was over. And then there's bananas. So there was a potential imposed tariffs that possibly was going to happen against Colombia recently. So some background on Colombia and the U.S. There's actually a free trade agreement between Colombia and the U.S. So recently, Colombia decided to refuse the 2 U.S. flights carrying deported illegal immigrants. President Trump threatened to impose a 25% tariff on Colombian imports, those same products we just talked about, into the U.S. and sanctions. So this probably would have had a backfire effect on Colombia because a lot of people, like I know for sure Colombia, the coffee, I know plenty of people that import coffee from Colombia. It would have been a disastrous effect to their economy. So to avoid that, even though, well, he did try to avoid it at first, but then he decided to impose tariffs and his own tariffs. So President Petro from Colombia decided to impose his own tariffs. And then I guess he changed his mind last minute and backed down and they decided to just accept the Colombian migrants. When you really think about the effects of what it would do to your economy, sometimes like, is it worth fighting for? It's not really worth the hassle. So Trump won in this case. So think of tariffs as a leveraging tool that presidents can do against one another as a way to get their way, pretty much. So, on way that you can circumvent potential tariffs, these are some suggestions. You guys can always look into. I'm sure there's plenty more, but you want to look domestically. Look right here in the U.S. See what we have here. You want to get quotes from several different resources. Figure out which one is best for you. Sometimes it's cheaper to buy something that's right here in the U.S. than buying it overseas and paying those freight forwarding fees, the trucking fees, countless other fees. You might want to import from countries not affected by additional tariffs. So just look around, see what countries are not fighting with the US right now, what countries Trump is not about to impose tariffs on. You can do that by staying up to date on the news. Watch the news, read newspapers, so much information on there. There's also tariff engineering. Sometimes you can just import like smaller components of the actual product and make the final product here. That might be cheaper for you. So look into all different ways that you could do to save on these extra tariffs and save the money, keep the money in your pocket and see what you can do to help out your company. Because of course, everything's going up. If you can, you're going to have to pass those costs on to your consumers. Your consumers might not want to do business with you because your price is too high. So you have to find other ways. So does anyone have any questions? You guys can unmute if you have any questions or raise your hand. Any question? I don't see any questions. So does that mean we did a good job? Hopefully that's what it means.
Thank you
All right.
so much for all those who attended. If you have any
Good.
comments, questions, our contact information, can you go to the next
Sure.
slide
Well,
with
these were our
this is our
references.
references. We'll send like a one-page sheet of what we talked about with the references. If you have any questions, you want to import anything to the United States or want to source products from countries that they're not being charged a lot of tariff. I'm able to assist you with that. Just kind of, if you want information, 15-minute conversation will be on the house. Just let me know. And then if you do Phoenix Global on YouTube, you'll see my webinars. I do monthly webinars. So if you have any suggestion of type of webinars you want to hear about, just reach out to us. And I'm excited to like be partnering up with Joe Mill, like kind of working together, and we'll bring the information that you want to know about, right to you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes, and I do have the next webinar I have is actually I think it's August 29th. It's with Global Chamber. We're doing the Global Chamber ACRA monthly session. So you guys can join in on that. It's listed on my website. Take a look at justyourbroker.com. Whenever I have webinars, it'll always be listed on there. Um, like I said, this was a webinar just to discuss what's currently going on, make everyone more aware, so they can make some changes on what they're doing and monitor their supply chain, maybe cut costs where they can. So thank you guys so much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you guys again. All right, have a good one, guys.
Have a good one.